Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewing window of Harmony Point Station and watched the massive alien ship dock. The Zephyrian vessel looked like a giant metal beetle, all sharp edges and dark armor plating. He had seen pictures before, but seeing it in person made his stomach tight with nerves. "They're bigger than I thought they would be," said Lieutenant Amy Carter as she joined him at the window. She carried a thick folder of files under her arm and looked as nervous as Jake felt. "The ship or the aliens?" asked Ben Rodriguez from behind them. The communications specialist was checking his translation device for the 10th time that morning. "Both," Amy replied with a weak smile. Jake turned away from the window and straightened his dress uniform. Today was the most important day in human history. After 3 years of careful messages sent back and forth across space, the Zephyrian Empire had finally agreed to meet with Earth's representatives. If things went well, humanity would have its first alien allies. If things went badly, Earth might face its first alien war. The docking bay doors opened with a loud hiss. Jake and his team walked forward to greet their guests. The first thing that hit them was the smell, something like burning metal mixed with old leather. The second thing was the size. The Zephyrians were huge. The shortest one stood at least 7 feet tall, and their leader had to duck slightly to fit through the doorway. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but that was where the similarity ended. Their skin looked like natural armor, dark gray and covered in overlapping plates that clicked softly when they moved. Each alien had 4 arms, 2 where humans would expect them and 2 more that sprouted from their backs. Their faces were flat and wide, with small black eyes that never seemed to blink. "I am General Vex Thor of the 3rd Battle Fleet," announced the largest alien in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. The translation device in Jake's ear turned the alien words into English, but it could not hide the anger that seemed to fill every word. "You are the humans who think they can speak for your entire world." Jake stepped forward and tried to keep his voice steady. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We are honored to meet with representatives of the great Zephyrian Empire." General Vex Thor looked down at Jake like he was studying an interesting insect. "You are smaller than our report suggested. Do all human males look so weak?" Amy Carter stepped up beside Jake. "General, we understand that physical differences between our species might seem strange at first. We hope that through these talks, we can learn to understand each other better." The general's 4 eyes focused on Amy with what looked like surprise. "The female speaks without permission. How curious. On Zephyr, females know their place." Ben Rodriguez cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should move to the conference room. We have prepared a meal that should be safe for both our species to eat." The general made a sound that might have been laughter, but sounded more like metal scraping. "Very well, let us see what the soft humans consider food." The conference room had been set up with the best furniture the station could provide. The table was large enough for both groups, with special chairs built to support the Zephyrians' larger frames. Soft lights created a peaceful atmosphere, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. As they sat down, Jake noticed that the general kept staring at Amy. The alien's expression was hard to read, but it did not look friendly. "Before we begin formal talks," Jake said, "we thought you might like to know more about Earth and our people. Lieutenant Carter has prepared a presentation about human culture and history." Amy stood up and activated the wall screen. Images of Earth appeared, green forests, blue oceans, and cities full of people. "Humanity has lived on Earth for thousands of years. We have learned to work together to solve problems and protect each other." General Vex Thor interrupted her. "You show pictures of weakness. Where are your weapons? Where are your warriors? All I see are soft creatures living in fear." "We do have weapons and soldiers," Amy replied calmly, "but we believe that peace is stronger than war. We hope to build friendship with the Zephyrian Empire." The general slammed one of his 4 fists on the table, making the coffee cups jump. "Friendship? You speak like children. In the galaxy, only the strong survive. The weak become food for the strong." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "We may look different from you, General, but humans are not weak. We have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. We have sent ships to other planets and built cities in space. Tricks and tools, the general said with a dismissive wave. Any species can build machines. True strength comes from here. He pointed to his armored chest. And here. He pointed to his flat head. Zephyrians are bred for war. We have conquered 12 worlds and defeated armies of species stronger than you. Amy looked at her notes and tried to steer the conversation back to peaceful topics. Perhaps we could discuss trade agreements. Earth has resources that might interest the Empire, and we would love to learn about Zephyrian technology. The general leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. What could soft humans possibly have that the Empire would want? You have no real weapons, no strong warriors, no understanding of how the galaxy works. Ben Rodriguez spoke up. We have art, music, literature. We have scientific discoveries and mathematical theories. We have the story of how a small planet learned to reach for the stars. Poetry. The general spat. The Zephyrian Empire is built on strength, not pretty words. We take what we need and destroy what stands in our way. That is how civilizations grow strong. Jake felt his temper rising but forced himself to stay calm. General, we invited you here because we believe both our species can benefit from working together. Surely there is something we can offer each other besides conflict. The general stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. His forearms spread wide, making him look even more threatening. You want to know what humans can offer the Empire? You can offer surrender. You can offer to serve as workers on the worlds we have conquered. You can offer to learn your place in the natural order. Amy Carter's face went pale, but she kept her voice steady. General, I think there may be some misunderstanding. We came here hoping to establish peaceful relations between equals. Equals. The general's voice rose to a roar. You think soft, weak creatures like you are equal to Zephyrian warriors? You think your tiny world full of frightened animals deserves respect? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Jake could see the other Zephyrians watching their general, with interest, as if they were waiting for something entertaining to happen. Ben Rodriguez had stopped taking notes and was staring at the aliens with growing alarm. I think, Amy said carefully, that maybe we should take a break and try this again tomorrow. Everyone is tired from the long journey and… Tired? General Vexthor moved around the table toward Amy. You think Zephyrian warriors get tired? Like weak humans? You think we need rest and comfort like soft children? Jake started to stand up, but the general was already looming over Amy. The alien's forearms were twitching with barely controlled anger, and his small black eyes were focused on her face with unmistakable hostility. You will learn respect, human female, the general growled. You will learn that when Zephyrians speak, lesser creatures listen. Amy took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. The wall was behind her, and the massive alien was in front of her. Jake could see her hands shaking slightly, but her voice remained calm. General, please. We are guests here, and you are our honored visitors. Let us try to find common ground. The general raised one of his massive hands. His armored fingers curled into a fist the size of Amy's head. The only common ground, he said, is the place where the weak learn to bow to the strong. The conference room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air recycling system. General Vexthor towered over Amy Carter like a mountain of living armor. His forearms moved slowly, deliberately, as if he was deciding which one to use first. Jake, Morrison felt something cold and sharp twist in his stomach. He had been in combat before, had faced enemy soldiers and dangerous situations, but this was different. This was not a battlefield where he expected violence. This was supposed to be a peaceful meeting between two civilizations trying to find common ground. Amy stood perfectly still against the wall. Her file folder was still clutched in her hands, and Jake could see her knuckles were white from gripping it so tight. She was scared, anyone could see that, but she was not backing down. General, she said in a voice that barely shook, violence will not solve our differences. We came here to talk, not to fight. The general's flat face twisted into what might have been a smile on a human. On him, it looked like a predator showing its teeth. Talk? You think words matter when strength speaks louder? You think your soft human ideas mean anything in the real galaxy? Behind the general, the other Zephyrians watched with interest. They did not look worried or surprised. They looked like they were watching a show they had seen many times before. Ben Rodriguez started to stand up from his chair. "General, please, the lieutenant is just trying to—" "Silence." The general spun around and pointed one massive finger at Ben. "You will speak when spoken to, or you will join your female friend in learning respect." Jake took a step forward. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to act, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was a diplomatic mission. Starting. A fight would ruin any chance of peace between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. But watching Amy trapped against the wall while the huge alien threatened her was making it hard to think straight. "General Vexthor," Jake said in his most official voice. "Lieutenant Carter is a respected officer and diplomat. She deserves to be treated with courtesy." The general turned back to face Jake. His small black eyes looked amused. "Courtesy? You want courtesy for a creature that dares to speak to warriors as if she were their equal? You want courtesy for a female who forgets her place?" "Her place is as my advisor and a representative of Earth," Jake replied. "She has every right to speak." "Rights?" The general laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Rights are earned through strength. Your soft human female has earned nothing but a lesson in reality." Amy tried to step sideways along the wall, moving toward where Jake and Ben stood. The general casually moved to block her path with one of his huge arms. "Where do you think you are going, little human? We are not finished with our conversation." "I think we are finished," Amy said with more courage than Jake thought he would have had in her place. "This meeting is over." The general's expression changed. The cruel amusement disappeared, replaced by something much more dangerous. "You think you can dismiss me? You think a weak human female can tell a Zephyrian general when a conversation is over?" Jake felt his heart start to beat faster. The air in the room felt thick and heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm. He could see the other Zephyrians leaning forward slightly, as if they were getting ready for something. "General," Jake said, trying one more time to calm the situation, "we are all guests on this neutral station. We should respect the rules." "Of rules?" The general's voice rose to a roar. "I will show you Zephyrian rules. I will show you what happens when the weak try to speak as equals to their betters." He turned back to Amy, raising his right hand high. The armored fingers were spread wide, and Jake could see that each fingertip ended in a sharp claw. The general's arm was as thick as Amy's waist, and when he pulled it back to strike, Jake could see the massive muscles moving under the natural armor. "You will learn silence," the general snarled at Amy. "You will learn respect. You will learn the price of forgetting your place." Time seemed to slow down. Jake could see everything with perfect clarity. The general's arm drawing back, Amy's eyes going wide with fear, Ben Rodriguez starting to shout a warning that would come too late. He could see the other Zephyrians watching with approval, and he could see that Amy had nowhere to run. The general's hand came forward in a vicious backhand slap aimed at Amy's face. It was not a punch meant to kill, but it carried enough force to break bones. Among Zephyrians, it was probably considered a gentle correction. For a human, it would be devastating. Jake Morrison did not think. He did not plan. He did not consider the diplomatic consequences or the political ramifications or the fact that attacking an alien diplomat might start a war. He simply moved. 3 million years of human evolution kicked in all at once. Millions of generations, of ancestors who had survived by being faster than predators, quicker than prey, and more vicious than anything that threatened their tribe. The part of Jake's brain that handled higher thinking shut down, and the part that had kept humans alive since they first picked up rocks and sticks took over. The general's hand was still moving toward Amy's face when Jake's fist connected with the alien's solar plexus. The spot where humans would have their diaphragm was apparently a vulnerable point for Zephyrians too, because the general's roar of anger turned into a gasping wheeze. Jake did not stop to admire his work. Before the general could recover, Jake's left hand grabbed the alien's shoulder for balance while his right fist drove upward in a perfect uppercut. The punch caught the general just under his flat jaw and lifted all 8 feet and 400 pounds of him clean off the ground. General Vexthor crashed to the floor like a falling tree. The impact shook the entire room and sent coffee cups flying off the table. The massive alien lay on his back, his 4 arms spread out around him, gasping like a fish out of water. The other Zephyrians stared in complete shock. Their supreme military commander, the hero of 12 conquests, the undefeated champion of their warrior culture, was flat on his back and struggling to breathe. One of them started to reach for what looked like a weapon, but stopped when Jake turned to look at him. Jake Morrison stood over the fallen general, his fists still clenched, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His dress uniform was rumpled and one button had popped off, but otherwise he looked perfectly fine. There was not a mark on him. Amy Carter slumped against the wall, one hand pressed to her mouth where a trickle of blood showed that the general's claws had caught her lip as he fell. Her eyes were wide with shock, staring at Jake as if she had never seen him before. Ben Rodriguez stood frozen by his chair, his mouth hanging open. The translation device was still running, but for once there were no alien words to translate. The Zephyrians were too stunned to speak. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. The only sounds were the general's labored breathing and the soft hum of the station's systems. Finally, Jake looked down at the general and spoke in a voice that was perfectly calm and controlled. In human culture, General, we have a saying: do not start a fight unless you are prepared to finish it. General Vexthor managed to roll onto his side and struggled to sit up. His armor was cracked in 2 places, and one of his smaller arms was bent at an odd angle. He looked up at Jake with an expression that was part pain, part confusion, and part something that might have been respect. Impossible, he wheezed. You are soft. You are weak. How did you move so fast? Jake offered his hand to help the general up, but the alien waved him away and climbed to his feet on his own. Even injured, he still towered over the humans, but somehow he did not seem as threatening as before. I moved fast enough, Jake said simply. The question now is what happens. X. The emergency alarm started blaring 30 seconds after General Vexthor hit the floor. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside the conference room, and Jake could hear the sound of running feet as station security rushed toward them. Ambassador Kethmar, the second-ranking Zephyrian, was the first to break the shocked silence. He pointed one of his 4 arms at Jake Morrison and spoke in a voice that shook with rage. You have committed an act of war against the Zephyrian Empire. You have struck down our supreme military commander. By our laws, you must die immediately. Jake stood his ground, though his heart was still pounding from the fight. By human laws, I defended an innocent person from attack. Your general struck first. Lies, Ambassador Kethmar roared. General Vexthor was merely correcting an insolent female. It is our right and our duty to maintain proper order. Amy Carter wiped the blood from her split lip and stepped forward. Despite everything that had just happened, her voice was steady and professional. Ambassador, what your general did would be considered assault on any civilized world. Captain Morrison acted in defense of... Silence! The ambassador cut her off. You will not speak unless given permission. You have caused enough trouble already. The conference room doors burst open and 6 security officers rushed in. They were from different species. 2 humans, 2 insectoids that looked like giant mantises, and 2 others that Jake did not recognize. They all carried stun weapons and looked ready to use them. What happened here? Demanded the lead security officer, a human woman with sergeant stripes on her uniform. Everyone started talking at once. The Zephyrians were shouting about human treachery and demanding immediate justice. Ben Rodriguez was trying to explain about diplomatic immunity. Amy was attempting to give a calm report of the events. Through it all, General Vexthor sat in his chair, breathing heavily and saying nothing. Enough. The sergeant fired her stun weapon into the ceiling, creating a brilliant flash of light that got everyone's attention. One at a time. Ambassador Kethmar, please explain what happened. The Zephyrian ambassador drew himself up to his full height. The human captain attacked our general without warning or cause. This is an act of war against the Zephyrian Empire. We demand that the criminal be executed immediately according to our laws." Jake started to protest, but the sergeant held up her hand for silence. "Captain Morrison, your version, please." General Vexthor was threatening Lieutenant Carter. He raised his hand to strike her. I intervened to protect my officer from assault. The female spoke out of turn. Ambassador Kethmar insisted. "Our general was merely maintaining proper discipline. It is our right to correct inferior beings." The sergeant looked around the room, taking in the overturned chairs, the spilled coffee, and the general's cracked armor. "I'm calling for the station mediators. This is way above my pay grade." Within an hour, the main arbitration chamber was filled with representatives from a dozen different species. Mediator Prime Zakth, an insectoid creature that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a spider, presided over the emergency session. His compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like tiny mirrors as he studied the security footage from the conference room. Most disturbing, Mediator Prime Zakth clicked in his translated voice. "We have reviewed the recordings multiple times. The sequence of events is clear, but the implications are troubling." A holographic display showed the fight in slow motion. Jake could see himself moving toward the general, throwing his punches, and stepping back as the alien fell. Watching it from the outside, it looked almost too fast to be real. "According to our analysis," the mediator continued, "the human captain's response time was 0.7 seconds from the moment General Vexthor began his attack. This includes recognition of threat, decision to act, movement across the room, and completion of counterattack." Ambassador Kethmar shifted uncomfortably in his specially built chair. "What does response time matter? The human attacked our general. That is the only fact that concerns us." "On the contrary," said Dr. Lisa Hayes, who had been brought in as an expert witness, "response time matters very much. It tells us about the biological capabilities of different species." Dr. Hayes was a small woman, with gray hair and thick glasses, but when she spoke, the entire chamber listened. She was Earth's leading expert on alien biology and had written the textbook that most species use to understand each other. "Mediator Prime," she continued, "with your permission, I would like to explain what we observed in that footage." "Please proceed, Dr. Hayes." Dr. Hayes activated her own holographic display. It showed brain scans, muscle diagrams, and reaction time charts. Most species in the galactic community evolve from prey animals. Your flight response is highly developed, but your fight response is limited. When threatened, you think first, then act. She pointed to a chart showing different species and their average reaction times. Zephyrians, for example, typically require 2.3 seconds to process a threat and begin physical response. Insectoids like our honored mediator average 1.8 seconds. Most galactic species fall somewhere in that range. "And humans?" asked Mediator Prime Zakth. "Humans evolved as persistence predators. We chased our food across vast distances, which required split-second decisions about terrain, obstacles, and prey behavior. More importantly, we evolved as social hunters who protected our pack members." Dr. Hayes highlighted the human section of her chart. "Average human combat response time is 0.6 to 0.9 seconds, but that number drops significantly when humans are protecting someone they care about." General Vexthor, who had been silent since arriving in the chamber, finally spoke. His voice was still hoarse from Jake's punch. "You are saying that humans are naturally faster than Zephyrians? Not just faster, General. Different. When Captain Morrison saw you threaten Lieutenant Carter, his brain did not process the political consequences or diplomatic ramifications. His evolutionary programming took over. He saw a pack member in danger and responded with overwhelming force." Ambassador Kethmar made a dismissive gesture. "Interesting theories, but they do not change the facts. The human attacked our general." "Doctor," Hayes turned to address the ambassador directly. "With respect, Ambassador, your general attacked first. Captain Morrison's response was purely defensive, designed to stop an immediate threat to another human. The female was not in real danger, the ambassador protested. Our general was merely— Your general's strike would have fractured Lieutenant Carter's skull, Dr. Hayes interrupted. Her voice was calm but firm. We analyzed the force and angle of his attack. For a Zephyrian, it might have been a mild correction. For a human, it would have been potentially fatal. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Mediator Prime Zakth spoke. Are you suggesting that this was a case of biological incompatibility rather than deliberate aggression? I am suggesting that neither side fully understood what they were dealing with, Dr. Hayes replied. General Vexthor did not realize how fragile humans are compared to Zephyrians. Captain Morrison did not realize that his response would be seen as an unprecedented attack. Jake found his voice for the first time since entering the chamber. I did not think about politics or diplomacy. I saw someone about to hurt Amy and I reacted. If I had to do it again, I would make the same choice. General Vexthor studied Jake with what might have been newfound respect. You would risk war? Between our peoples to protect one human female? I would risk anything to protect any member of my team, Jake replied without hesitation. Even though she is not your mate or blood relative? Especially because of that. Humans choose their families, General. We do not just protect our genetic relatives. We protect our friends, our teammates, our fellow humans. Amy Carter is under my command, which makes her my responsibility. The general was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. On Zephyr, we protect only our own bloodline. The concept of chosen family is foreign to us. Dr. Hayes nodded. That is another crucial difference between our species. Humans form strong emotional bonds with non-relatives. These bonds trigger the same protective responses as family relationships. Mediator Prime Zakth's compound eyes reflected the chamber lights as he considered everything he had heard. This changes the nature of our investigation significantly. We are not dealing with a simple case of diplomatic assault. We are dealing with a fundamental misunderstanding between two very different species. Ambassador Kethmar looked less certain than he had before. Our laws still demand justice for the attack on our general. And human laws demand justice for the attack on our officer, Jake replied. Then we have a problem, the mediator observed. Two species, two sets of laws, two different understandings of what happened in that room. General Vexthor struggled to his feet, wincing as his injured arm moved. Perhaps, he said slowly, the problem is not legal but personal. The human captain defeated me in single combat. By the old laws of Zephyr, that gives him the right to demand satisfaction. Satisfaction? Jake asked. A formal challenge. Single combat to settle the matter with honor, rather than lawyers and politicians. The chamber erupted in shocked voices from a dozen different species. The news traveled fast through the galaxy's communication networks. Within hours of General Vexthor's challenge, every major species had heard about the incident on Harmony Point Station. The story grew more dramatic with each telling. A small human had knocked down a mighty Zephyrian general with his bare hands. In the military headquarters of 47 different worlds, analysts pulled up every file they had on human combat capabilities. What they found made them very uncomfortable. Admiral Krex of the Altarian Defense Force stared at his computer screen in disbelief. The report in front of him contained data from the 3 previous encounters between Altarian forces and human vessels. In each case, he had assumed the reports were exaggerated or mistaken. Now he was not so sure. Communications, he barked to his aide. Get me a direct line to Fleet Command. We need to discuss the human situation immediately. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. The Rigelian Empire, which had considered humans to be weak potential slaves, suddenly found themselves reviewing footage of human soldiers in action. The Vegan Confederacy, who had planned to demand tribute from Earth, began to reconsider their strategy. Back on Harmony Point Station, Jake Morrison sat in his quarters and tried to understand what he had gotten himself into. The formal combat challenge was scheduled for the next day, and representatives from dozens of species were already arriving to watch. You do not have to do this, Amy Carter said for the 10th time. She sat across from him at the small table, her split lip now covered with medical tape. The mediators could find another solution. Like what? Jake asked. The Zephyrians want justice for their general. We want justice for you. The only way to satisfy both sides is to settle this the old-fashioned way. Ben Rodriguez looked up from his portable computer. Jake, I have been reading about Zephyrian combat traditions. This is not going to be easy. They fight with all four arms, they have natural armor, and they are trained from childhood for war. Jake nodded. I know. But what choice do I have? If I back down now, the Zephyrians will think all humans are weak. They might decide Earth is worth conquering. Dr. Lisa Hayes entered the room carrying a thick folder of papers. Captain, I have been analyzing the medical data from your encounter with General Vexthor. There are some things you need to know. She spread several charts across the table. The general's injuries were more severe than anyone realized. You cracked 2 of his ribs, dislocated his shoulder, and gave him what humans would call a severe concussion. He is still recovering. Is he going to be okay? Jake asked with genuine concern. He will live, but he should not be fighting for at least a week. The fact that he challenged you while still injured tells us something important about Zephyrian culture. Amy leaned forward. What do you mean? Warriors who lose face in Zephyrian society often choose death over dishonor. General Vexthor would rather risk his life in combat than live with the shame of being defeated by what he considered a weak human. Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. So if I win, I might actually kill him? If you lose, he might kill you, Dr. Hayes replied bluntly. Zephyrian combat challenges traditionally end with the death of one participant. The room fell silent. Finally, Ben spoke up. There has to be another way. Maybe we can convince him to withdraw the challenge. Dr. Hayes shook her head. I tried talking to Ambassador Kethmar. He says the general would rather die than withdraw. It is a matter of honor. Honor, Jake repeated bitterly. He attacks a woman half his size, and now it is about honor. Different species, different values, Dr. Hayes said. But Captain, there is something else you should know. Word of this fight has spread throughout the galaxy. Military analysts from every major power are studying footage of your encounter with the general. She pulled out another chart showing reaction times and combat effectiveness ratings. They are realizing that human combat capabilities have been seriously underestimated. Some species are already revising their strategic assessments of Earth. Amy looked puzzled. What do you mean? I mean that every species in the galaxy assumed humans were weak because we look soft and fragile compared to them. They never considered that we might be fast, adaptable, and extremely protective of our own kind. Jake studied the charts. Are you saying other species are afraid of us now? Some of them are reconsidering their plans for Earth, Dr. Hayes admitted. The Vegan Confederacy was planning to demand tribute payments from our government. They canceled that mission yesterday. The Rigelian Empire had discussed the possibility of taking human slaves. They are now reviewing that policy. Ben whistled softly. All because I punched one alien? All because you demonstrated capabilities that no one expected, Dr. Hayes corrected. Think about it from their perspective. They saw a small human move, faster than their instruments could properly track, defeat a trained warrior twice his size, and do it all to protect someone who was not even family. The door chimed, and Mediator Prime Zaxth entered the room. His insectoid features were impossible to read, but his body language suggested urgency. Captain Morrison, I bring disturbing news. General Vexthor has made additional demands for tomorrow's combat trial. Jake stood up. What kind of demands? He wishes the fight to be broadcast live to the home worlds of both species. He wants your people to see their champion defeated, and he wants his people to see their honor restored. Amy gasped. That means billions of people will be watching. Precisely, the mediator confirmed. The general has turned this into a public spectacle. The political implications are enormous. Dr. Hayes frowned. Mediator, have you shared your analysis of human combat capabilities with General Vexthor? I have tried, but he refuses to listen. He believes that his previous defeat was due to surprise and luck. He thinks that in a fair fight, human weakness will be exposed. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. So, if I lose, every species in the galaxy will think humans are weak. If I win, they might be afraid of us. There is a third possibility, the mediator said quietly. If you win with honor and restraint, you might earn something more valuable than fear. Which is respect. The next morning, Jake stood in the center of Harmony Point's main arena. The circular fighting space was 50 feet across, surrounded by tiered seating that could hold 1,000 spectators. Every seat was filled, and camera drones hovered overhead to broadcast the fight across the galaxy. General Vex Thor entered from the opposite side of the arena. Despite his injuries, he moved with the fluid grace of a natural predator. His 4 arms were wrapped with traditional Zephyrian combat bands, and his natural armor gleamed under the bright lights. The crowd fell silent as Mediator Prime Zakth stepped into the center of the arena. This combat trial will determine the matter of honor between Captain Jake Morrison of Earth and General Vex Thor of the Zephyrian Empire. The rules are simple. The fight ends when one participant yields or is unable to continue. Jake looked up at the viewing section and saw Amy Carter watching with obvious worry. Ben Rodriguez sat beside her, his portable computer recording everything. Dr. Hayes was there too, along with representatives from dozens of alien species. "Combatants, are you ready?" the mediator asked. General Vex Thor raised all 4 of his arms and roared a battle cry that echoed through the arena. The sound sent chills down Jake's spine, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Ready?" Jake said simply. The mediator stepped back. "Begin." General Vex Thor charged forward like a living tank. His 4 arms spread wide to prevent Jake from dodging to either side. But the general had made the same mistake that every other species made when fighting humans. He expected Jake to think before acting. Instead, Jake's 3 million years of evolutionary programming kicked in once again. He did not try to dodge or block or think his way out of the situation. He simply moved with the fluid speed that had kept his ancestors alive, through ice ages, predators, and countless battles for survival. The real fight was about to begin. General Vex Thor's charge looked unstoppable. 400 pounds of muscle and natural armor moving at full speed should have crushed any human in its path. But Jake Morrison was not where the general expected him to be. At the last possible second, Jake dropped low and rolled to his right. The general's massive fist swept through empty air where Jake's head had been a split second before. Before Vex Thor could turn around, Jake was already behind him, driving his elbow into the back of the alien's knee. The joint buckled, and the general stumbled forward. He spun around with surprising speed for something so large, swinging 2 of his arms in wide arcs that would have taken Jake's head off if they had connected. But Jake was already moving again, ducking under the first swing and stepping inside the reach of the second. The crowd gasped as Jake landed 3 quick punches to the general's ribs before dancing away. Each hit found the gaps between the aliens' natural armor plates with surgical precision. General Vex Thor roared in pain and anger. "Stand still and fight like a warrior." "I am fighting like a human," Jake replied, circling around the larger opponent. "We do things differently." The general charged again, this time trying to grab Jake with all 4 arms. For a moment it looked like he might succeed. His reach was enormous, and he was faster than any human had a right to expect. But Jake slipped through his grasp like water, appearing behind the general and landing another series of precise strikes. In the viewing section, Dr. Lisa Hayes leaned forward to speak to Ambassador Kethmar. "Do you see what is happening, Ambassador?" The Zephyrian diplomat watched his general struggle to land a single blow on the much smaller human. "I see your captain running like a coward instead of meeting strength with strength. You see a persistence predator using the hunting strategy that kept humans alive for millions of years," Dr. Hayes corrected. "We do not meet strength with strength. We exhaust our prey and then strike when they are vulnerable." On the arena floor, General Vex Thor was beginning to breathe hard. His 4 arms felt heavier with each swing, and the human seemed to be getting faster instead of slower. Every time the general thought he had Jake cornered, the smaller fighter would slip away and land more punches in exactly the right spots. "This is impossible," the general panted. "You are tiny. You should be tired by now." Jake wiped sweat from his forehead but showed no other signs of fatigue. "General, my ancestors used to chase animals for 20 miles across the African plains. This is just getting started." The truth was that Jake was getting tired, but he had trained for endurance his entire military career. More importantly, he was fighting for something bigger than himself. Every human watching this fight, every alien species studying human capabilities, every future diplomatic contact between Earth and the galaxy depended on what happened in the next few minutes. General Vexthor tried a different approach. Instead of charging, he stood in the center of the arena and waited for Jake to come to him. His forearms moved in a complex pattern, covering all possible angles of attack. "Clever," Jake muttered under his breath, but the general had made another mistake. He assumed that humans only attacked from expected directions. Jake sprinted straight at the general, then dropped into a baseball slide that sent him between the alien's legs. As he passed underneath, he grabbed Vexthor's ankle and twisted hard. The general's own weight worked against him as he toppled forward, crashing face first into the arena floor. The crowd erupted in shocked voices. Several alien species had never seen anything like Jake's unorthodox fighting style. Zephyrian combat was all about strength and direct confrontation. Human combat was about adaptation and using an opponent's power against them. General Vexthor pushed himself up on his forearms, spitting out what looked like blue blood. When he turned to face Jake, there was something different in his small black eyes. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with confusion and what might have been respect. "You fight without honor," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I fight to win," Jake replied, "and I fight to protect my people." "Your people?" The general struggled to his feet, favoring his twisted ankle. "The female is not your mate. She is not your offspring. Why do you risk death for her?" Jake paused for a moment, considering his answer. The entire galaxy was listening, and his words might shape human-alien relations for generations to come, because that is what humans do, General. We protect each other, not just family, not just our own tribe, but anyone who stands with us. Amy Carter is my friend, my colleague, and my responsibility. That makes her worth fighting for. Something changed in General Vexthor's expression. For the first time since the fight began, he lowered his forearms and really looked at Jake Morrison, not as an enemy to be crushed, but as something he was, trying to understand. "You would die for a non-relative? I would die for any human under my command. I would die for any innocent person who needed protection. That is what makes us human." The general was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, again his voice was thoughtful rather than angry. "On Zephyr, we fight for blood, family, and personal honor. The concept of fighting for chosen family is foreign to us." In the viewing section, Amy Carter wiped tears from her eyes. Ben Rodriguez was frantically taking notes, trying to capture every word for the historical record. Around them, alien representatives whispered to each other in dozens of different languages. Dr. Hayes leaned over to Ambassador Kethamar again. "This is what we tried to explain in the conference room, Ambassador. Humans form emotional bonds that trigger protective responses. We do not just defend our genetic relatives." The ambassador watched his general and the human captain standing in the center of the arena, no longer fighting but talking. "It is difficult to understand. Why would evolution create such inefficient loyalty?" "Because it works," Dr. Hayes replied. "Humans who protected their entire group survived better than humans who only protected their immediate family. We are social creatures, Ambassador. Our strength comes from our bonds with each other." General Vexthor took a step forward, then stopped. His ankle was clearly painful, and Jake could see that the alien was reaching the limits of his endurance. But instead of attacking again, the general did something unexpected. He sat down. The crowd fell completely silent. A Zephyrian warrior sitting down during combat was unheard of. It was either a sign of surrender or something else entirely. "Human Jake Morrison," the general said formally, "I concede that you are a worthy opponent. But before this trial ends, I would ask you a question." Jake remained ready to fight, but he nodded. "Go ahead. If I were to threaten one of your people again, you would respond the same way?" "Every time," Jake said without hesitation, even knowing it might start a war between our species. Even then. The general considered this for a long moment. Then, he struggled to his feet and raised all four arms in what Jake recognized as a Zephyrian salute. "I yield," General Vexthor announced in a voice that carried throughout the arena. "Not because I am defeated in battle, but because I have learned something important about humans. You are not weak. You are dangerous in ways we never expected." The crowd erupted in chaos. Zephyrians shouted in their native language while other species argued about what they had just witnessed. In the middle of it all, Jake Morrison and General Vexthor stood facing each other with mutual respect. Mediator Prime Zakth stepped back into the arena. General Vexthor has yielded. Captain Morrison is declared the victor. But more importantly, both participants have demonstrated that understanding between species is possible. Over the next hour, as the crowd slowly dispersed, something remarkable happened. Representatives from dozens of alien species approached Jake and his team, not with demands or threats, but with genuine interest in learning more about humanity. The Altarian admiral who had been planning military action against Earth wanted to discuss mutual defense treaties. The Vegan Confederacy offered to establish trade relationships. Even species that had never shown interest in humans before began talking about cultural exchange programs. Dr. Lisa Hayes found herself surrounded by xenobiologists from across the galaxy, all eager to understand human pack bonding and protective instincts. Ben Rodriguez was fielding requests for interviews and documentary projects. Amy Carter, despite her bruised face, was already discussing the possibility of serving as Earth's first ambassador to multiple alien worlds. General Vexthor approached Jake as they prepared to leave the arena. The alien moved slowly, still favoring his injured ankle, but his posture showed respect rather than hostility. "Captain Morrison, I owe you an apology. I struck your officer because I thought humans were weak creatures that needed to learn their place. I was wrong." Jake offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, the general clasped it with one of his four hands. "General, we were both wrong about each other. Maybe that is where we start building something better." "Indeed," the general agreed. "I have learned that strength comes in many forms. Your species may be small and soft, but you are fast and fierce when protecting your own. Any civilization that threatens Earth will face not just human weapons, but human fury." As they walked out of the arena together, Amy Carter fell into step beside them. "So what happens now?" she asked.